With the final shape getting nearly a 6-month delay, I've been looking for a couple games to occupy my time. Call of Duty has its normal fill of playing matches with the boys, but I wanted something with a little more depth to sink my teeth into, and recently re-downloaded the Division 2 on a whim. Now, a year ago, if you'd have told me that I'd be playing the Division 2 in 2024, I'd have probably said you're lying or trying to pull a good joke on me. But here I am at the end of 2023, rolling into the new year playing more of the Division 2 than I have ever since the release of the Warlords of New York expansion. Ubisoft and Massive have announced that they are doing another story expansion or story content here in 2025, so I thought I would revisit the game after some time away. In conjunction with the new story content that's being worked on, Massive has also been looking to improve the game and work on the game's overall health in something that they call Operation Resolve. This is a planned period akin to something like Operation Health in Rainbow Six Siege. What this aims to do is improve on the overall player experience to the game for the onboarding process, to the reduced cost of materials for optimization, to name a few. What I wasn't prepared for was just how little that I knew about the game already and its deeper endgame systems. My build was old and outdated, and there was a whole new seasonal content model for me to work my way through as well. The feeling of being overwhelmed is something that I hadn't felt in a long time, but I took it as a good thing because there was just so much for me to do and explore while diving back into the Division 2. The feeling that I had when diving back in the Division 2 after some time away was something that I had always heard of when playing Destiny 2, but never got to experience firsthand because I was so in tune with all the happenings and the game's overall system changes. What I mean by this is I was absolutely fucking lost. I had no idea what I should be doing in the end game. While I was familiar with the invasion mechanic that resets every week, there was so much more that I was missing to the game. You have your gear and your build system set up, and here I was thinking I had a somewhat decent build going on, and then I see some of my teammates, what they're able to do, and I slowly realize that my build isn't shit. There's also 99 floors of the summit that you can work your way through, which is a wave-based tower that sees you start out at the ground floor and then work your way all the way up to 99, where you will eventually have to fight a boss. Earning loot, facing different enemies on each floor while varying objectives is something that's nice about that game mode. It is also shared with the Descent game mode, which is this game's version of a roguelite mode, with your character stripped of all of its gear, skills that you've acquired, and forcing you to pick and choose as you clear each room. I haven't even touched on other things like the raids, which I might feel a little overwhelming at first, but there's something that I really want to get into down the line once I become more accustomed to this game. And it doesn't matter what objective you tackle first, just do the ones that you're comfortable doing. And once you build up that confidence in your gear and your build, you can dabble into the more facets of this game's complex and intricate systems.
We are the Division, and history will remember us.
So what I like to do on the start of every review is give a little talk about my experience for the game from a technical standpoint. What did I play it on? How did it run? Those types of things. I like to give this at the top of the review just so that you, the audience, at least have a level or an idea of where this review is coming from, and if you do decide to pick it back up or are diving in for the first time. I went ahead and I played this game on an i7-13700K and an RTX 4080 with every setting turned up to its max setting at 1440p. And oddly enough, this game pushed my GPU as hard as recent games like Alan Wake 2 and Cyberpunk's Phantom Liberty. There are some instances where the frame rate in this game will absolutely tank, and it varies from area to area. 1 minute you're a rock solid 144 FPS, and then your game is chugging into the lower 40s to mid 50s. There really isn't one thing that I could really pinpoint to in my time revisiting the game, but the overall performance and stability is one thing that Massive did mention that they were going to be looking into with Operation Resolve. I also had a few hard crashes while playing the game, and there was one that even forced me to uninstall and restall the game. The scan and repair option was not working, and it kept putting me in this loop of having to re-download a 30 gigabyte update, so I just said, I'm going to go ahead, uninstall the game, reinstall it. That seemed to solve my issue. Even though I've had all these issues, I still have had a great time, I think, with the game, but I do hope that the performance issues are ironed out sooner rather than later. So I want to start out with one of the most basic aspects of the Division 2, and that would be the seasonal manhunts. These were something that was introduced back in the Warlords of New York expansion that adds 4 targets that unlock every so few weeks, ending with the final showdown against the head enemy of that cell that you're trying to track down. The objectives to get to this part usually require you to clear out some control points or do a few bounties around the area, which will open up the next part of the investigation. This was the first thing that I dove into when returning to the game, and I think it's a good tease for the combat and content that you will be seeing in this game. While the manhunts aren't particularly long, they do offer up a little more story implications that help move the plot forward. It might be hard to follow the seasonal stories for most games, as once the season is all over, that content is then removed. But something cool that Division 2 did with this season was allow you to do the legacy manhunts for all the past seasons once you've reached a certain rank in the battle pass. While these aren't the full manhunts, they are the final mission of the encounter and allow you to obtain any loot that you might have otherwise been unable to unlock. One of my favorite quotes that I'd heard when looking to get back into this game was, "Don't worry about what you're doing, just play what you feel comfortable playing." This stuck with me for more than one reason. My Destiny brain has always been conditioned to do nearly every single activity in this game, no matter how boring or sweaty it may be. I'm looking at you, Trials. In the name of loot and progression. The summit, like I mentioned earlier, is a tower that you have to work your way up floors with increasingly difficult enemies, as well as changing layouts, so the same floor isn't exactly the same way it was each time you go through. This fun little mode keeps you on your toes as enemy factions that you're facing also varies from floor to floor, forcing you to plan or account for different enemy types you wouldn't normally see in such rapid succession. There's also some loot that you can find while working your way up the floors, as well as a vendor that allows you to purchase gear and weapons. The main attraction and reason for this is that there's an exotic cache that you can earn once a week by completing 30 floors, which will take some time, but for a guaranteed exotic, that's not a bad trade-off. While I haven't heard that many people talk about this mode in particular, it was one that I was quite fond of, not just for the crazy amount of loot and materials you get, but for the more relaxed playing of just clearing out rooms and objectives as I work my way from 1 to 99. Next up in the plethora of endgame activities is the Descent. While familiar to the summit, wherein that you are going from room to room clearing the enemies, this time you're actually stripped of all your gear and forced to choose a few starting items for your kit that you will then build across throughout the duration of your run. Having just come hot off the heels of playing God of War Ragnarok's Valhalla DLC, I was a lot more keen on this idea than I would have normally been. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a little bit of the roguelite genre when done right, but it feels as of lately every developer is trying to add it to their game, similar to how the Battle Royale craze popped off in 2017 and 2018. One thing that I really appreciate about this mode is that it forces you to think about what room you're going into with each time and run, given the difficulty rating as well as the possible rewards that might be available. Each choice meant that you had to plan accordingly and weren't able to rely on whatever busted build or weapon that you were running at that time. Sadly, with this mode, the rewards that you get for your time spent in this activity could range anywhere from a proficiency cache to a few other chest pieces. I see this mode as more of a fun, challenging way to see how far you can get rather than a dedicated endgame activity. Two things that you won't see much from me in this video are going to be the raids and the dark zone. While diving back into the Division, raids are probably the last thing that I will want to try because that is the true, test of my build in the endgame, and I'm not quite sure what to expect with the raids. The Dark Zone and I have a love-hate relationship where I do love the feeling of being in the Dark Zone and the story implications. I do think that is a really cool idea, but I mean nothing tilts me more in this game than having my loot stolen by camping in exfil or just running around clearing house with a broken build and a fully stacked squad. I'm sure it can be a lot of fun at times. The Dark Zone as well as the raids are something that I may revisit down the line, or if anyone would like to run them with me, post your name down in the comments and I'd love to run a few with you. This section is going to cover builds and gear and what I experienced, in my experience with the builds and gear system returning to the game. When returning to the game after some years away, I knew that my build wasn't that outdated or bad, or at least that is what I thought. Little did I know that a whole system and main component of the game was completely missing from my arsenal, and that is the recalibration station. Now, like I mentioned in the intro block, the knowledge I have of the Division 2 and its endgame systems is little to none, so if I do misspeak or misquote anything, I do apologize. One of the biggest tips that I got while running events was to build up your recalibration library, and at first, I wasn't sure what that meant exactly. What this meant was that I could take stats and attributes from weapons and add them to a catalog or a sort of library. So say I find a rifle that has a really high critical chance, but the level or other stats are a little too low on it. You can extract that critical chance value and add it to your bank so that you can then take it and put it on another rifle. This same concept also applies to all the armor pieces that are present in the game, except for the exotics. Those are locked in place with roles and attributes. It also felt embarrassing when I realized all this time, instead of scrapping the gear for the materials, I should have been checking the stats at the recalibration and itemization bench. It's also here at this bench that you're able to craft items with blueprints that you might have found across the map by defeating certain bosses, or as part of the seasonal levels that you can earn. My library of of craftable items is quite small, but growing, and the itemization locker is something that I'm going to take quite some time before I get it to where I would like. This system is so much more in depth than what I initially had thought and realized, and it's wild to see that I'm in the year 2024 and I'm still learning new things about a game that's nearly 5 years old. This is my build that I'm running now in case anyone does care. This is what you'll be seeing for, I think, a majority of the gameplay. I did find it a great video. I can't remember the guy's name, but I'll link it down in the description there. The build that I'm running is 4 pieces of the Striker gear set in order to get that damage stack, as well as an exotic mask that increases the damage the farther away that I am from the enemy. Add in the St. Elmo's engine, which I must say is a funny ass name for a weapon, and its exotic perks is for every 70 shots that I land, it will then load 71 rounds of electrified ammo into the gun, which applies a stun effect. It also increases the damage. The 2 skills that I run are the repair drone, which repairs your armor over time, along with the personal shield that allows you to tank a significant amount of damage while staying in the middle of combat. Yeah, that's my build. It's nothing special, but I did just want to include it in this video in case anyone did care. I know it definitely is not where I want it to be, but it's a start. I do want to give the Division 2 props where it's due, because I always felt that no matter what I'm playing, some way, shape, or form, I was leveling and upgrading my character. And this is done through the SHD watch that you earn once you finish the Warlords of New York expansion. And this watch allows you to put some skill points into categories like damage, skills, armor, weapon handling, and a bunch of other things. Each of these points is going to be a small fraction of a percentage point, which might not seem like that much at the start, but as you go and start to add more levels to this watch, the bonuses that you'll incur will slowly begin to creep and stack up. I'm only in the mid to late hundreds here in a lot of the footage that you're going to see on screen, and I can already start to feel a difference as I've slowly been dumping points into these categories. It all depends what you want to lean into first and foremost, and what your build calls for. You can imagine what it must be like down the line, as some of the people that I've ran missions with and seen in public areas are pushing level 2500 on the SHD watch and are able to blow through nearly every enemy without much resistance. So one day I hope to maybe get my build to that level, but until then I am just grinding out the end game activities. I know a lot of this might have been rambly and overwhelming, but I wanted to talk about a lot of the things that I experienced as a returning player to the Division 2 in 2024. The gunplay is just as tight as I remember. For a game that came out back in 2019, the Division 2 seems to be thriving and thriving well. New DLC was announced, they're working on the health of the game, and they actually also just announced that the Division 3 was being worked on. Now that still might be some time away, but it gives you a clear indication of where the future of the Division franchise is heading, along with the spin-off game Division Heartlands. Jumping back into this game has been a much more enjoyable experience than what I remembered back in 2020. Being able to find a build that suits my playstyle, along with some sweet gear, has allowed me to try my hand at some more difficult combat that I might have otherwise slogged through. Like I mentioned earlier, raids and the Dark Zone are things that I plan on getting to at some point, but I want to focus on honing my build in before diving too much into them. I did run a few games of the Dark Zone, but it ended about how you'd expect, getting rolled up by a 3-stack and getting all my loot stolen. Raids are something that I'm really interested in. Having ran every single raid in Destiny 2, I do want to see how this would play out with an 8-man environment instead of a 6-man environment like Destiny. So much of the Division 2 is getting a good build that you're comfortable running, whether that be a skill-focused build or straight weapon damage build, or something more balanced that leans into both. With so much content that is available to you once you start the endgame journey, it can seem very overwhelming about how and where you want to start. Doing the weekly invasion quest offers up a decent challenge to work your way through and offer up a few loot items along the way. Then you have the manhunts that accompany each season, with the previous manhunts being able to unlock permanently once you reach a certain rank on the free track of the battle pass. This allows players who might have missed a previous season or two to catch up and earn some of the rewards that they otherwise might have missed. While the legacy manhunts are just the final encounter with the boss rather than the full investigation like the current season, they are quite challenging and do offer up some replayability. Replayability is one word that I would use to describe the summit game mode, which sees you working your way up floors 1 through 99, as well as the roguelite mode, the descent, which sees you stripped of all your gear and forced to build up your arsenal with your choice of rewards that you get from clearing each room. Everything that I've mentioned here feels like I'm barely scratching the surface of what this end game has to offer. In the meantime, I'm nearing the end of the seasonal battle pass, which I think I will pick up once I finish it. And once that is done, I see myself trying to hone in on that striker build, really get the classification and get those modifications down to pump those numbers up a little bit.
Pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
It's quite powerful, but I know that I can make it even stronger, but it's going to take a little bit of time and commitment and a whole lot of grinding to get those pieces leveled and properly optimized. If you have any tips, tricks, or recommendations for the Division 2, drop them in the comments, because a returning player like myself can always use a little extra help, and maybe someone watching this video can find something useful out of it as well. So I just want to say, if you did make it this far in the video, thank you for taking the time out of your day, and this has been my thoughts on the Division 2 in 2024. Thank you for watching.